There is a paradox at the heart of empathy. It is not merely the soft glow of kindness, as popular culture often paints it. It is something stranger, sharper, older. What looks like a blessing began as a wound. Imagine a fracture in the soul that did not close, but instead became a window, through which the unconscious flows into awareness. Carl Jung hinted at this when he spoke of the wounded healer, the one who carries pain so deeply that it transforms into vision. For the empath, that vision is not abstract. It is lived, breathed, and embodied in every relationship. Sensitivity is not a surface trait. It is a survival adaptation, an alchemy of pain into perception. Think back to your earliest memories of reading a room. Perhaps you sensed the change in atmosphere before anyone spoke, like a sudden chill in the air. Perhaps you felt the heaviness in someone's silence more loudly than their words. This was not training. It was necessity. Many empaths grew up in environments where love was conditional, moods unpredictable, silence dangerous. A volatile parent, a fragile sibling, a household of unspoken rules. Whatever the form, the lesson was the same. Your safety depends on sensing what cannot be said. In stripping away your childhood armor, life forced you to cultivate an ancient radar. That radar, refined over years, is what later shimmers as an aura others notice. And yet, this aura is double-edged. It is beautiful precisely because it is born of struggle. Picture it as light emerging through cracks in the wall. Without the breakage, there would be no glow. Without the scar, there would be no second sight. Jung would call this the paradox of individuation. Wholeness comes not by erasing wounds, but by integrating them. The empath's gift is to carry a fracture that has been made fertile. From this fracture, intuition blooms like wildflowers growing from stone. When you walk into a crowded room, others sense something rare. They may not have the language to name it, but they feel a field, a resonance, a subtle vibration around you. Some are drawn in, longing to be nourished by it. Others feel unsettled, even threatened, because your openness highlights their own armor. This is what Jung described as the meeting of archetypes. The empath stirs both longing and fear in those who have not yet touched their own unconscious. You awaken in them both attraction and resistance, but here lies the danger. If you do not know how to hold this gift, you risk becoming a vessel without boundaries. Imagine an alchemist's flask placed over fire. It must be thick enough to withstand heat. Otherwise, it cracks and the contents spill. You are that vessel. Without strong edges, your gift cannot be sustained. The empath who fails to recognize this becomes exhausted, resentful, or even ill. Sensitivity without structure collapses under its own weight. So let us pause. If you are listening to this story right now, I invite you to reflect. Where are you hearing me from? Your living room, your headphones on a train, your phone at midnight? Drop a comment and tell me your location and time. It helps us remember that even in solitude, we share a collective web of presence. And while you are here, consider subscribing to Carl Jung Stories Unveiled and turning on notifications so that you do not miss the next part of this unfolding journey. Now back to the thread. The empath's rare aura is not accidental. It is the result of a psyche that was cracked open early, forced to adapt, and then reshaped by fire. To recognize this is to reclaim agency. Empathy is not a weakness, nor is it merely niceness. It is an ancient intelligence, a psychic seismograph that detects tremors long before they surface. Yet intelligence can become a burden if it is unconscious. Unexamined, empathy binds you to everyone else's suffering until you can no longer tell where you end and the world begins. Examined, it becomes wisdom. It becomes the ability to say, "This pain is mine to heal. That pain belongs to another." The true story of empathy is therefore one of transformation. A wound became a window. A fracture became a field. And through this, a paradox is born. The empath shines not because they were spared suffering, but because they survived it. Their aura is proof that brokenness, when integrated, becomes radiance. This is the doorway of our journey. And as we step through, we will ask a harder question. What happens when this rare aura is left unprotected? What is the cost of carrying everyone's pain? That is where we will go next. The empath's aura does not appear out of thin air in adulthood. It is seated in childhood, long before you knew words like sensitivity or intuition. Picture a small child sitting in a room where silence is heavy. Perhaps a parent's jaw is clenched. Perhaps footsteps sound sharper than usual. Perhaps the air itself feels electric. Before a word is spoken, the child already knows. Danger is near. This is not imagination. It is survival. Children who become empaths learn to read invisible signals, to catch shifts in tone, to anticipate needs before they are voiced. Their nervous systems become early instruments, tuned not for play, but for vigilance. Think of it as a radar system forged under pressure. While others grew up believing they could relax, you may have learned that safety depended on scanning for threats. Over time, this scanning crystallized into a gift, but at a cost. It taught you that your feelings came second. Your role was to harmonize the room, to absorb tension, to soothe anger before it erupted. This is how the aura is born, from countless repetitions of putting your own needs aside to decode the unspoken currents of others. And yet, what once saved you as a child can imprison you as an adult. The same radar that detected danger now also detects sorrow, frustration, longing, whether or not you asked for it. The result is a luminous aura, yes, but also a porous one. Imagine walking through life like a harp, every vibration from the outside world plucking your strings. A stranger's grief lingers in your chest, as though it were your own. A colleague's anxiety leaves you restless long after you leave the office. Even joy can overwhelm, flooding your system with sensations too intense to process. This is the paradox. The very sensitivity that makes your aura rare also leaves you vulnerable to exhaustion. Jung would say that the empath's aura is both archetypal and personal. It is shaped by childhood necessity, but resonates with something much older, the inheritance of the wounded healer. Just as Chiron in myth could not heal his own wound, yet felt the pain of every creature, so too the empath carries both fracture and medicine. Your aura is not merely psychological, it is mythological. It echoes an ancient role humanity has always known, the one who perceives what others avoid. But mythology offers both insight and warning. When the wounded healer forgets to tend their own wound, they become consumed. The same holds true for empaths. If your childhood radar remains your only guide, adulthood will repeat the same survival scripts. You will continue to neglect yourself, continue to mistake hyper-attunement for love, continue to live as though the only way to exist is to serve. This is not destiny. It is conditioning. And conditioning can be rewritten. One way to rewrite it is to recognize the difference between empathy as instinct and empathy as choice. As a child, you had no choice. The radar was switched on for you. As an adult, you can learn to turn the dial. You can ask, Do I need to feel this right now? Is this mine or theirs? Does my aura have to stay open in every room I enter? These questions mark the shift from unconscious empathy to conscious empathy. They are small questions, but they rewire the entire system. Let us pause on an image. Imagine carrying a bowl of water through a crowded marketplace. Everyone dips their hands into your bowl, taking what they need. Soon, it is empty, and you feel sadness, depletion, resentment. This is the life of the unconscious empath, always giving, never refilled. But somewhere nearby, hidden in the corner, there is a fountain flowing endlessly. The fountain represents your inner source, the self. To find it, you must stop relying solely on the bowl of survival habits, and instead draw from the deeper well of wholeness. Only then can the aura remain vibrant without collapse. I invite you to reflect. When did your radar first awaken? Was it in a childhood home where moods shifted like weather? Was it in a friendship where silence meant danger? Trace the line from then to now. See how that early vigilance became today's aura. And ask yourself, am I still living in survival mode? Or am I ready to step into conscious choice? Because here lies the next challenge. Without boundaries, this aura, as luminous as it is, becomes a beacon for both light and shadow. Those in need of healing will come. Some will nourish, others will drain. And the question every empath must eventually face is, what is the cost of carrying everyone's pain? What is the cost of carrying everyone's pain? At first, the answer seems obvious. Fatigue, overwhelm, perhaps irritability. But the cost runs deeper, reaching into the body, the psyche, and even the soul. To live without boundaries is to live as though your skin were transparent, every emotion passing through unchecked. You become not just a listener, but a sponge, absorbing what was never yours to hold. And eventually, the sponge saturates. It can no longer take more. And instead of radiating compassion, it begins to drip with resentment. Boundaries are often misunderstood. Many empaths believe that to set limits is cruel, that saying no betrays their identity as caring beings. Childhood may have reinforced this belief. Perhaps you learned that compliance equaled love, that silence equaled safety, that self-erasure was rewarded, while self-assertion was punished. But what saved you then now traps you. Jung would describe this as an inflated persona, a mask of the good one that hides the repressed shadow. Behind the smile, behind the endless giving, lies suppressed anger, unacknowledged grief, and a quiet yearning to breathe freely. Consider the metaphor of the alchemical vessel. The empath is that vessel, containing both the poison and the gold of human emotion. For transformation to occur, the vessel must withstand fire. But without firm boundaries, it cracks. Once cracked, the contents spill. Burnout, bitterness, even illness. How many times have you noticed physical symptoms? Migraines, stomach knots, chronic fatigue, that seem to have no medical explanation. Often, these are the body's protests, carrying the weight that the psyche refuses to release. Without boundaries, empathy becomes somatized. The body pays the bill for what the mind cannot filter. This is why saying no is not cruelty, but compassion. It is the construction of a gate, not a wall. Gates open and close by choice. They let in what nourishes and keep out what depletes. Without such gates, the empath's garden is trampled. Flowers wilt, soil erodes, and what once was lush becomes barren. With gates, the garden flourishes. Visitors may enter, but only by invitation, and the host retains sovereignty. Of course, Setting boundaries is not easy. It provokes fear. What if people leave? What if they call me selfish? What if I disappoint them? These fears are echoes of old conditioning. Yet paradoxically, the relationships that collapse when you set boundaries are the very ones that were draining you most. Healthy connections survive gates. Parasitic ones do not. This is discernment, not rejection. Discernment is love in its highest form, but let us return to the cost when boundaries are absent. There is the emotional cost, a slow erosion of joy, replaced by quiet resentment. There is the psychological cost, a loss of identity because your sense of self blurs with everyone else's. There is the spiritual cost. Your aura dims, not because you are less compassionate, but because you are no longer rooted in authenticity. The empath becomes like a candle left in the wind, flickering, sputtering, at risk of extinguishing. And then comes the cruelest irony. You cannot help anyone, not even yourself. It is here that Jung's concept of shadow work becomes indispensable. Within the shadow lies the anger you were told was forbidden, the instinct to protect yourself, the raw fire that says enough. To access this shadow is to discover that saying no is not betrayal, but self-preservation. It is reclaiming the right to exist as more than a vessel for others. Without this, the empath becomes enslaved to unconscious patterns, reliving the same cycles of exhaustion and collapse. Let us pause for a moment. Picture a dream in which you are running endlessly, chased by faceless figures, never able to rest. Or another where you are carrying a heavy load that grows heavier the longer you walk. These are common dreams of empaths living without boundaries. The psyche communicates in symbols, and these dreams warn, you are carrying too much. Ignore the warning, and life will escalate. Relationships breaking down, bodies failing, spirits withering. So ask yourself now, whose pain are you carrying today that is not yours to carry? Which burdens have you silently absorbed without questioning? Whose storms have you mistaken for your responsibility? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations. Invitations to remember that empathy without boundaries is not empathy at all. It is fusion. And fusion erases both you and the other. True empathy requires separation, a clear sense of where you end and they begin, so that connection is authentic rather than parasitic. The rare aura you carry shines brightest not when it absorbs everything, but when it reflects clarity. Without boundaries, it attracts chaos. With boundaries, it attracts transformation. And this is the turning point we approach next. Shadow work, the path of reclaiming your hidden fire, so that compassion is no longer martyrdom but conscious choice. There comes a moment in every empath's life when the unconscious sends a warning. Enough. It may arrive as burnout, as a shattered relationship, as an illness, or as a dream so vivid it refuses to be ignored. Jung would call this a confrontation with the shadow. The hidden part of the psyche where we bury what we are told is unacceptable. For the empath, this shadow often contains anger, self-preservation, and the desire to step back. These qualities are not flaws. They are the fire you need to survive. Most empaths recoil at the thought of anger. Conditioned to believe it is destructive, they exile it, wearing instead the mask of the endlessly giving one. Yet in Jungian terms, this is merely persona, the role you play to win approval. Anger, in truth, is the guardian at the gate of the soul. It is not rage against others, but a signal that your boundary has been crossed. When integrated, it becomes healthy fire, the power to say, I matter too. Shadow work is the process of inviting this guardian back into the circle of the self. Imagine descending into a forest at night. Branches tangled, whispers rising from the dark. At first, fear grips you. What if monsters hide here? But as your eyes adjust, you realize the shapes are not demons, but forgotten parts of yourself. That fierce instinct, that repressed no, that hidden longing to rest. These are your allies. They are not here to destroy your empathy. They are here to complete it. One of Jung's most enduring insights was that individuation, the path to wholeness, requires a marriage of opposites. Light without shadow is illusion. Shadow without light is despair. The empath's task is not to extinguish their gift, but to temper it with the strength found in shadow. Only then does empathy evolve from raw wound into wisdom. Only then does the rare aura cease to flicker and begin to burn steady, like a flame held in a lantern. Consider the myth of the wounded healer. Chiron, pierced by a wound that would never close, became a teacher not by bleeding endlessly, but by learning to live with the wound consciously. In the same way, your gift is not to sacrifice yourself until nothing remains. It is to recognize that your pain is a teacher. When you allow anger to speak, not as violence but as truth, you reclaim energy that has long been siphoned away. Shadow work is the act of transforming anger into clarity, self-protection into discernment, solitude into strength. Let us turn to dreams again, for the unconscious often speaks most clearly there. An empath might dream of a dark forest pressing in, branches clawing at their skin. At first it feels threatening, but if they listen closely, the forest begins to speak. It whispers, "You are carrying too much. Set it down." In another dream, a serpent appears, shedding its skin. The serpent does not symbolize malice but renewal, the sloughing off of old patterns and the emergence of new boundaries. These images are not punishments. They are guides, urging you to honor the shadow rather than fear it. Practical shadow work can take many forms. Journaling the unspoken no's of your day. Sitting in silence for 10 minutes and letting irritation surface without judgment. Asking yourself, whose feelings did I absorb that were not mine? What part of me resisted, but I silenced? Over time, these small rituals loosen the grip of persona and allow the shadow to breathe. And when the shadow breathes, empathy stabilizes. It ceases to be martyrdom and becomes discernment. Without this work, the empath's aura remains fragile. Magnetic, yes, but easily clouded by pride or bitterness. Some empaths, mistaking their gift for superiority, fall into the trap of ego, believing their sensitivity makes them more spiritual. But this is just another mask, another persona. True empathy, forged through shadow work, is humbler. It understands that depth does not grant a throne. It grants responsibility. Responsibility to live authentically, to protect one's flame, to awaken others by example rather than sacrifice. So I ask you to consider, what part of your shadow have you been denying? Is it the anger that rises when someone drains you? Is it the sadness that surfaces when you realize how much of yourself you've given away? Is it the fierce longing to stand still, unburdened for once? These are not flaws. They are the missing fire. When you welcome them, your empathy ceases to be a wound bleeding endlessly. It becomes a torch. This is the transformation Jung pointed toward. Individuation not as escape from suffering, but as the weaving of suffering into wholeness. To be an empath who embraces the shadow is to become a conscious empath, one who can feel deeply without drowning, one who can love without losing themselves. one who can walk into the world carrying both light and fire. And this leads us to the next phase of our story. How the empath evolves from a sponge into a mirror, and eventually into a mystic. The journey is not about absorbing, but reflecting. Not about rescuing, but awakening. For much of life, the empath lives like a sponge. Every vibration, every sigh, every hidden sorrow is absorbed. This is what survival once required, soaking up signals to anticipate danger. But adulthood demands something different. To continue as a sponge is to collapse under the weight of countless unprocessed emotions. The true evolution is not to keep absorbing, but to begin reflecting. The empath must learn to become a mirror. Imagine holding up a mirror to someone. You do not steal their image. You do not absorb it into yourself. You simply reflect what is already there. This is what conscious empathy looks like. Instead of drowning in another's storm, you stand firm, letting them see their own reflection in your steadiness. Some will find this uncomfortable, because the mirror shows truths they may not be ready to face. Others will find it liberating, as though your presence confirms what they always suspected. They are capable of carrying their own light. The empath who shifts from sponge to mirror undergoes a profound inner change. First, they stop apologizing for boundaries. They recognize that a gate is not cruelty, but clarity. Then they realize that compassion is not about merging with pain, but about holding space for transformation. Love becomes less about sacrifice and more about presence. In Jungian language, this is individuation, the integration of shadow and persona, the creation of a self that no longer bleeds out to prove worth. This transformation often brings solitude. When you stop absorbing, some relationships fall away. People who relied on your constant availability may accuse you of coldness, but what they really mean is that the mirror no longer plays their script. This is not abandonment, it is honesty. Those who are ready will adjust. Those who are not will drift away, and in their place, new connections arise. Relationships built on mutual respect, where your presence is valued not for how much you give, but for the clarity you embody. The mirror archetype leads naturally into the archetype of the mystic. The mystic is not someone who retreats from the world entirely, but someone who sees deeply into its patterns. The mystic recognizes the collective unconscious at work, the archetypal tides flowing beneath everyday interactions. For the empath, stepping into the mystic archetype means no longer seeing sensitivity as a curse, but as a gateway to wisdom. You begin to realize that the subtle field others sense around you is not a static glow, but a living symbol. Your aura breathing, expanding, contracting in rhythm with your inner work. One of the traps along this path is spiritual superiority. Some empaths mistake their heightened perception for proof of being more evolved, but Jung warned of this inflation of the ego. True mysticism is not about elevation above others. It is about authenticity. To be a mystic is to live in alignment with the unconscious, to let symbols, dreams, and inner images guide without falling into illusion. The conscious empath understands this. Your aura is not a badge of higher rank, but a responsibility. It is a light others may use to find their way, but not one you carry into their storms for them. Let us pause with an image. Picture yourself standing at the threshold of a vast mirror. On its surface, you see not just your face, but fragments of every person you have loved, feared, or tried to save. It is overwhelming, almost unbearable. But slowly, as you breathe, the fragments fall away. What remains is your own reflection, clear and steady for the first time. This is the moment when the empath ceases to define themselves by others' wounds. They realize, I am not the sum of borrowed sorrows. I am my own reflection. And in that clarity, the aura brightens. The practical shift from sponge to mirror can be cultivated in daily rituals. When you feel the weight of someone else's energy, pause and silently say, I see this, but it is not mine. When you sense heaviness after a conversation, place your hand over your chest and breathe until the weight lifts. When dreams bring images of carrying too much, write them down and ask, what am I being asked to release? These are small acts, but they recalibrate the aura. Over time, they train your nervous system to witness without absorbing. From sponge to mirror, from martyr to mystic, from rescuer to awakener. This is the arc of transformation. The empath becomes not a lifeboat ferrying everyone else to shore, but a lighthouse standing firm on the rocks, guiding those who are ready. And as we turn toward the final section, we will look at the symbols and rituals that keep this lighthouse lit, so that the empath's rare aura remains steady in a storm-tossed world. Dreams often carry the language the conscious mind resists. For empaths, these dream symbols are not random, but archetypal guides for survival. The serpent slithering through your sleep may unsettle you, but it carries a promise of renewal, shedding skin, drawing a new boundary. The deer, with its gentleness and fragility, whispers of tenderness balanced with caution, reminding you that vulnerability is not the same as weakness. And the owl, wide-eyed in the dark, watches what others cannot see, embodying the empath's gift of perceiving shadow without flinching. These animals are not just images. They are companions in your individuation, teaching you how to carry your aura without depletion. Symbols do not end in dreams. Life itself speaks symbolically to the empath. The crowded room that leaves you drained is a living parable. Too many hands dipping into your bowl of water. The sudden illness that appears without cause is a message. Your body is carrying what your psyche refuses to release. The relationships that collapse after you set boundaries are symbols too, revealing who was there to grow and who was only there to feed. Jung would remind us, symbols are the royal road to the unconscious. To ignore them is to remain trapped in repetition. To honor them is to step into wisdom. But symbols alone do not sustain. Rituals ground the empath in daily life. Without them, the aura flickers, unprotected against the demands of the world. Consider the simplest ritual, 10 minutes of silence. In that pause, the endless chatter of other people's emotions softens and your own voice emerges. Or the ritual of writing one line each day. What did I carry today that was not mine? This question itself is a purification, a way of sorting wheat from chaff, even saying no once a day, not as rejection, but as devotion to your own wholeness, is a ritual act. Boundaries become not just psychological strategies, but sacred practices. Imagine yourself now as a lighthouse on a cliff. The storm rages below. Waves crash violently. Ships toss in the dark. The lighthouse does not plunge into the sea to rescue each vessel. It does not extinguish itself in despair at the scale of the storm. It stands steady, its flame burning. This is the final image of the conscious empath. You are not meant to be a sponge drowning in the ocean. You are meant to be a beacon, a presence of clarity that guides without collapsing. The aura, once porous and fragile, becomes resilient. It draws not chaos, but those who are ready to awaken their own light. And yet, even the lighthouse must tend its flame. To burn steadily, you must rest. You must feed your inner wellspring, connect to solitude, and honor the shadow's whispers. This is not selfishness. It is responsibility. A burnt-out empath saves no one. A steady empath transforms by example alone. Jung's vision of individuation finds its living form here. An empath who has woven together wound and wisdom, shadow and light, self and other. So let us end this story with an invitation. Tonight, before sleep, notice what images visit you. A storm, a child, an animal. Write them down. Ask what they reveal about your aura. Tomorrow, practice one small ritual of sovereignty. Say no once. Breathe for 10 minutes. Or imagine yourself as that lighthouse. Feel how your aura shifts when you claim your place in the world. This is not about becoming perfect or untouchable. It is about becoming steady. A steady flame, a clear mirror, a conscious empath. And remember this: you are not here to carry everyone's storm. You are here to shine so steadily that others remember they can light their own flame. That is the true destiny of the empath's rare aura. Not sacrifice, but awakening. Picture again the lighthouse standing against the storm. The wind howls, waves strike, ships drift dangerously close to the rocks. Yet the lighthouse does not move. Its task is not to fight the sea or rescue every vessel. Its task is to shine. This is the essence of the conscious empath: steadfast, luminous, unshaken by the chaos surrounding them. When you live this way, your rare aura stops being a liability and becomes a sanctuary. You are no longer consumed by the suffering of others. Instead, you radiate presence that awakens those ready to meet their own healing. Too often, empaths confuse compassion with erasure. They believe that to love is to disappear, to merge completely with another's grief or rage. But compassion is not self-destruction. Compassion is clarity. It is the ability to say, "I see you, but I will not dissolve into you." This is what Jung meant when he warned that individuation requires integration. Love without selfhood becomes sacrifice. Love with selfhood becomes transformation. To stand firmly in your own being while still opening your heart. This is the highest act of empathy. Let us revisit the imagery of the garden. Without a fence, the flowers are trampled. With walls too high, no one can enter. But with a living gate, the garden thrives. You invite whom you choose, when you choose, and you know when to close the gate. Boundaries, then, are not barriers to love, but structures that protect it. They allow compassion to remain vibrant rather than exhausted. They keep the empath's aura radiant, rather than dimmed by endless depletion. This lesson can be practiced in simple, daily rituals. For the next 24 hours, try 3 small acts. First, say no once. Not harshly, but clearly. Second, take 10 minutes of silence, listening for your own voice beneath the noise of others. Third, write 1 line in a journal. Today I chose not to carry. These practices are not trivial. They are seeds of sovereignty. Over time, they restore the flame that storms once threatened to extinguish. Another image to hold is the sky. You are the sky. Others are clouds. The clouds pass. Dark, heavy, beautiful, fleeting. They are not yours to keep. You can witness them, feel their shadow, even admire their form, but you do not become them. When you remember this, empathy transforms. You remain expansive, unbroken, capable of both tenderness and resilience. This is what makes the empath's aura rare. Not that it never knew pain, but that it continues to shine through it. So I leave you with a call, not of urgency, but of courage. Do not hide your gift, and do not waste it by burning out. Protect your flame, honor your boundaries, and let your aura guide by presence rather than sacrifice. The world does not need more exhausted healers. It needs empaths who are awake, souls who can walk into the storm without losing themselves, who can reflect truth like a mirror, and who can hold steady like a lighthouse. And if you ever doubt your strength, look back at what you have already endured. The storms you survived, the wounds you transmuted, the light you still carry. These are your proof. Your aura is rare not because you were spared breaking, but because you were broken and still chose to love. That is the highest form of courage. That is the true hidden truth Jung pointed to. And that is the gift you are called to carry forward.